At exactly 12 o'clock in the night, the society warden arrived on the complaint of a resident. He said that a strong smell was coming from the flat upstairs. The warden opened the door with a master key. Holding his nose, he looked around and found out that this house had been vacant for a long time. Elderly woman from the neighborhood told that a single mother used to live here. Her son Jim had gone missing years ago. On the wall near the bed, there was a large black stain. When he removed the bedsheet, a rotten, decayed corpse was found inside. No one could have imagined that the single mother was lying dead on her own bed. That black hole near the headboard of the bed looked even more frightening. Without wasting any time, the warden called the police and started preparing to remove the body. In the narrow and stinky lift, 3 people stood with the body. Meanwhile, drug dealer George reached the basement alone, where he met a beggar. George took out a bundle of cash, and in return, the beggar gave him 3 bottles of a black sticky liquid. The beggar said with a laugh, "Take care of your dog." The very next moment, he disappeared along with his dog. Actually, that beggar was the real owner of that black liquid, which he had just sold to the dealer. With a little processing, that black stuff used to get ready. In reality, what George was selling wasn't white powder, but a special substance made in this apartment. Whoever tasted it once became its slave. Many people in the apartment had already become its victims. One day, that mother opened her mailbox and found a letter from a stranger. It said, "I can help you find your child." Considering it the last ray of hope, the mother immediately rushed home and called the number given in the letter. The caller asked her to come to the 13th floor and also told her to bring a photo of her child. As soon as the call ended, Bessie, the mother, eagerly reached the caller's home. The woman who opened the door had messy hair. She introduced herself as an astrologer who could answer people's biggest worries. Bessie saw that the woman began to burn the photo of the child. She began to chant something like mantras. The room started to fill with smoke, and Bessie's pupils began to widen. In the haze, she saw her child had grown up and was playing with her in a brightly lit room. She wishes this dream would never end. But the astrologer says, "Time is up. What you saw is the future." Tears flow from Bessie's eyes. She takes out all the cash she has and gives it to the old woman. As soon as Bessie leaves, the woman quickly takes out the black soil from inside the candle and eats it. Actually, what Bessie saw was just an illusion created by burning that black soil. That's why most people are crazy after it. Meanwhile, in Jim's house, the oven door in the kitchen opens on its own, and Luhan comes out of it. It seemed as if he knew this house very well. He pulls out a photo of Jim and his mother from a corner, then walks straight to the bedroom where the mother had died. He reaches out and touches the black round hole, from which a bright light was coming out, like a rising sun in space. Just then, someone pushes open the door of the living room. 2 thieves enter the house. They knew the lady of the house had died, and now had come to find something valuable. On the floor, only the fat cat's skin was left, but they paid no attention to it. The beggar sensed the sound and had already merged into the walls. The thieves were very curious about that black hole. They began feeling around it. Suddenly, the beggar opened his eyes in anger and took out an orange liquid from his pocket. When he slowly began to mix it, another black hole opened in the ceiling. And the thief in the living room had it even worse. As soon as the beggar clenched his fist, the thief's heart began to contract violently. His partner sensed something was wrong and quickly tried to drag him out of the house. The thief collapsed to the ground. Screams echoed through the entire apartment. On the other side, some drug dealers were unaware of all this. George distributed today's earnings among his men. The old members were angry. They said, "Why is the intern Yuri getting as much as us?" But George seemed to trust him especially. He didn't care about anyone's complaint, and silently left with Yuri. Near the stairs, Warden Glenn arrived searching for his son. He didn't want Yuri to always be with those people. He told Yuri, Come home right now. But Yuri ignored him. Angrily, Glenn said, "If you don't come back tonight, then don't come back ever." Saying this, he angrily entered the lift. Glenn wanted to investigate something in the basement. But suddenly, the lift shook violently and stopped at the first floor. He saw that the lift ceiling could be opened. As soon as he started climbing up, his head hit an electric wire, and he fell to the ground unconscious. At that time, some people passed by outside the lift. But they thought, the warden will get out himself. Poor Glenn lay there. No one paid attention to him. George comforted him. "Every dad is like that. Don't take it to heart." Then George took Yuri to his home. Both of them entered the dark dining room. There, George's drunk father was lying senseless on the table. There was anger in George's every step. As a child, he had been beaten badly by his father. Now it was time to take revenge. Yuri stood there shocked. Yuri was left standing. He never wanted his relationship with his father to turn out like this. After leaving the room, both of them reached the apartment rooftop. George said that in this world no one cares about him. He wanted Yuri to build a new family with him. Hearing all this gave Yuri a shiver. He said he can't live without his father. Saying that, he left George right there and walked away. Meanwhile, Glenn, lying unconscious in the elevator, regained consciousness. He began to bang on the door loudly. Yuri heard the sound and ran there. But even together they couldn't open the heavy lift door. Glenn told his son to turn on the lift's backup power. Yuri reached the control room on the roof in just 3 steps and turned the main switch on. The lift got power again. But just then Yuri saw the lift door open by itself. He found it strange and leaned forward to look. As soon as he turned around, George was standing in front of him. He gave Yuri a strong push. Thankfully, Yuri managed to grab the wall just in time. He started screaming for help. But George walked away without saying a word. The next moment, the lift doors closed, and Yuri fell straight into the lift shaft. Glenn heard the sound of the fall and panicked. As soon as he looked up, he saw his son's hand hanging down. The situation worsened when the lift started to move on its own. It began rising upward. If it reached the top, Yuri's body would be crushed. Frightened, Glenn shouted and broke the emergency power connection. Finally, the lift stopped. Luckily, Yuri's fate was good. Even after falling from such a height, he only had multiple bone fractures. The doctor said he would recover in some time. Glenn now desperately needed money. He was hoping to claim insurance. But when he inquired, he found out that the investigating officer had gone missing. And without his signature, the money could not be claimed. There were once again tons of problems in the apartment that needed to be handled. And he couldn't find time to care for his son. With great difficulty, he found a job advertisement. He went to the hospital to give food to his son. Yuri would say, "There's something in this apartment that wants to kill me." He never named George, but said the lift doors open and close on their own strangely. Glenn nodded in agreement. He too felt something wrong in the building. Next morning, Glenn got ready nicely and left for the interview. But the moment he stepped outside the building, trouble began. First, his car wouldn't start at all. When he opened the bonnet, he saw that black sticky liquid had accumulated inside the engine. With no choice, he took a taxi to the company. As soon as he was registering at reception, he felt something sticky under his shoe. When he looked down, that same black liquid was stuck to his shoe. He immediately made an excuse and went to the washroom. He pulled out a dirty rag and started cleaning his shoes. When he looked up, he saw black stains spreading on the mirror. Out of fear, he stepped back. As soon as he turned, there was nothing there. From the shock, his epileptic condition triggered again, and he fell to the ground unconscious. Glenn lost his chance at the interview without reason. Back in the office, Glenn sat there depressed. Just then, Bessie came running and tried to comfort him. Glenn's mind was already very disturbed. He accidentally said that his son is missing. Hearing that, the two got into a heated argument. In anger, Bessie decided that she would go back to live in her own house. But when she got there, she was shocked. Her boyfriend Jack was not home. What she didn't know was that Jack was, at that moment, inside another apartment on the same floor. His eyes were empty, and his feet were chained. The one who had captured him was his neighbor. That woman now walked out with a bottle of milk towards the dustbin to feed the child for Jack. After separating from Glenn, Bessie became even more lonely than before. Slowly, she started visiting that fortune teller again and again. Meanwhile, lying on the hospital bed, Yuri had become bored. Now he spent time just drawing pictures. Just then, an old woman lying on the next bed, who was Yuri's upstairs neighbor in the apartment, saw one of his drawings and was shocked. She asked in surprise, "How do you know this boy?" Yuri replied, "We meet every day." But the old woman was very clear. "That boy went missing years ago, and you've just recently moved into this building. How can you know him?" She said that back then, Jim used to stand near the lift every day, waiting for his mother to return home. That very night, he secretly escaped from the hospital, determined that he must go back to the apartment and uncover the mystery. Meanwhile, on guard duty, Glenn suddenly received a phone call. The caller claimed to be a senior official from the property management company and warned him not to try for another job. Already shaken from failing the interview, Glenn feared he might now lose this job too. Panicked, he promised that he wouldn't look for another job anymore. But he didn't notice that the telephone he received the call on had wiring that was already soaked in black liquid. Everything around returned to normal again. But Glenn knew this ghostly nightmare wasn't over yet. At that very moment, his son Yuri had returned from the hospital. He looked at the CCTV cameras in the apartment lobby and guessed that these must have been installed by his father. From one corridor, while walking, he ran into the grocery store salesman. Yuri told him he had come to find that ghostly little boy. The salesman said, "This is all nonsense." But still he agreed to go with him. Meanwhile, Glenn was watching their every move from the monitoring room. He called and scolded, "Tell that rude boy to go back to the hospital." But Yuri didn't seem to hear anything, and turned with the salesman toward another corridor. That corridor wasn't even visible in the building's blueprint. Yuri and the salesman soon reached the far end of that corridor. Yuri remembered there was a hidden door there. Yuri opened the door and entered the room where he had once spent time with Jim. But Jim was nowhere to be seen. He looked all around. This place used to be an entertainment room. On the notice board, someone had forcibly punched a big hole. Yuri remembered. The little boy had once taken something from the fridge. Out of curiosity, Yuri opened the fridge lid. Inside there were rotten and decayed things, and among them was a broken, old photograph. As soon as Yuri tried to pick up the photo, suddenly a strong force pulled him inside the fridge. The fridge door closed on its own. Yuri felt like he was drowning in black liquid. Outside, the salesman panicked. He picked up his walking stick and forcefully opened the fridge door. Yuri came out gasping for breath. Just then he thought. The photo inside the fridge was the same shape as the hole on the notice board. On the photo it was written, "The first child born in this building, Jim." Yuri's instincts said something. This photo surely holds some important truth. Meanwhile, the homeless man living in the basement entered the tunnel filled with black liquid once again. Inside the tunnel there was still the same glowing light, like a new sun being born in the universe. Yuri then went to the old woman at the hospital. He wanted to know about Jim. When he showed her the photo of the painting on the entertainment room wall, the old woman looked a bit lost. She could only remember this much. That child used to stand in the corridor every day, waiting for his mother. But she had completely forgotten about the photo being taken. It seemed like to know the truth. Everyone shown in the photo would need to be identified and remembered. But as soon as he stepped out of the corridor, his father Glenn stopped him at the main door. Seeing his dirty, grimy son, Glenn said angrily, "Go take a bath." While in the bathroom, Yuri saw George standing below the building from the window. He remembered, this was the man who had pushed him. But for some reason he couldn't feel hatred for George anymore. Maybe there was some pain in his silence. Meanwhile, sitting in the hall, Glenn felt that the main door opened by itself again. This time he clearly saw. It was the spirit of his dead wife. He told his son, "There's no need to go to school anymore." Then he took him to the security room and instructed him, "If any resident shows any disturbance, report it immediately." Then he left to install more CCTV cameras in the corridor. Yuri found several notes left behind by his father. He was shocked. His dad was planning to change jobs. Then how did he suddenly become so involved in all this? Just then, on the CCTV screen, he saw his father standing and staring into the air. In reality, Glenn was once again seeing the spirit of his dead wife. Just as Glenn was about to step forward, the grocery store salesman showed up. He said, "Oh, I forgot to bring my house key." Glenn rushed and opened the door with the master key. But he didn't know. This was a trick. The salesman's real plan was to delay Glenn, so that Yuri could take the old woman to the security room. As soon as they reached, Yuri turned on the building's public broadcast system and made an announcement. On the occasion of this building's 40th anniversary, all old neighbors are invited to the entertainment room. By the time Glenn heard this announcement, it was too late. Many residents had started getting ready, wearing clothes, grooming themselves. But the mother who had lost her child was in no mood to attend any party. That missing child's milk bottle was being carried by that mad woman. Seeing this, the girl's doubt and fear both increased. Because that bottle used to belong to her boyfriend Jack. She quietly followed the woman and noted down the number of her room, putting her ear to the door. She heard Jack's voice coming from inside. Bessie ran inside and called out for Jack, but there was no response. Finally, Bessie broke the door with force. Inside, Jack was sitting in front of the TV, completely blank, lost. She wanted to take him away, but Jack was chained with iron shackles. Just then, the mad woman returned. She saw someone had entered the room, yet she innocently began to make tea. The moment Bessie saw the black liquid in her kettle, without thinking, she punched her hard. She tried reminding Jack of the old days, but he kept repeating just one sentence. "I want the black piece." Bessie panicked, not realizing the mad woman had now gotten up. The next moment, the kettle struck her head, and she fell unconscious. When Bessie regained consciousness, she saw the mad woman wiping blood from her forehead. Bessie's heart started pounding rapidly. She quickly stood up and ran out of the room. There was now some movement in Jack's eyes. Maybe memories were returning. Jack whispered the child's name. During preparations for dinner, Jack's memory fully returned. He begged the mad woman to let him go. Though she was sad, she agreed with a heavy heart, because she had genuinely fallen in love with Jack. Meanwhile, residents of the apartment slowly started entering the entertainment room. More people had arrived than expected. Without wasting time, Yuri raised the real issue. Does anyone remember who was the first child born in this apartment? He pulled down the sheet covering the board. Everyone looked confused as they approached the photo. As they looked at the picture on the wall, a spark returned in their eyes. They all started sharing their memories. Within minutes, forgotten stories began to reconnect. This was a story decades old. A pregnant woman had gone into labor prematurely. But fortunately, the child was born healthy. All the neighbors were happy. They believed this child would bring good luck to the apartment. But as Jim grew older, his single mother took up a job at a bar. and started leaving him alone at home frequently. Then one day, the child suddenly went missing. The mother found out after several days. Gradually, the neighbors forgot about the boy. But one strange thing remained. Every night, they all had the same strange dream. Suddenly, Glenn stormed in. For some unknown reason, he forcefully cleared the room. After convincing his son to go home, Glenn went alone to the basement maintenance room. There, his dead wife Wangling appeared once again. This time she looked more calm. They were meeting like a couple reuniting after years. When it was all over, Glenn opened his eyes. He was lying in a heap of sludge. Now there was no doubt. Wangling was the black liquid itself. Her purpose was to control Glenn and make the security manager dance to her tune. But she forgot one thing. There was another person in this apartment. Combining all the info from neighbors, Yuri came to a conclusion. There is a mysterious entity in this building that feeds on people's pain and makes them forget all their happiness. Now he had to destroy it at any cost. He tried to put his hand into the black hole, but he couldn't feel anything. Instead, he caught the attention of the homeless man. Yuri also felt that something was always watching everyone. As he was walking in the corridor, the beggar silently followed him. But when Yuri turned, there was no one there. He bent down to examine the hole in the wall that his father had broken, but nothing unusual appeared. Just then he saw a shadow around the corner. He picked up his flashlight and saw the owner of the dog who had been affected by the black fluid. Terrified, Yuri turned and ran back home. As he entered, he saw his father talking to someone in the air. Now Yuri was sure. His father was under the influence of the black liquid. Yuri put his ear to the door and listened. His father was saying to the air, "We need to send him somewhere." Yuri, on the other hand, made a big decision after thinking deeply. He didn't know how he'd fight the black fluid demon, but he knew he could take away its power. Yuri and the shopkeeper went to the black fluid processing unit carrying petrol. But George didn't care. He stared at the shopkeeper with jealousy and rage. When Yuri said, "We're just friends," George pulled out a lit lighter and threw it into the petrol spread on the floor. The pieces and that factory started melting rapidly before their eyes. For the first time, there was a glimpse of peace and hope on Yuri's face because this was the first link in the end of that terrifying nightmare. Now, the supply of all essentials to the shadow people living on black fluid throughout the building had been completely cut off. The fire hadn't spread much, so all three quickly exited the processing unit. Meanwhile, the black eye-like structure in the basement seemed to be sensing everything. It began expressing its displeasure with a heavy and unhappy growl. Even the elevator Yuri was in started shaking, as if the black fluid had now completely unleashed its madness. Yuri silently reached the house of the man whose dog had once bitten him. He learned that the man had not died. Yuri had come especially to apologize. He said he had been confused by the black monster earlier, which is why he had allowed the dog to attack its owner. The dog's owner revealed his wounded face to test the sincerity of Yuri's apology. Yuri gathered his courage and began to apply ointment on his wound. Suddenly, the adjacent wall started shaking. The black fluid monster had followed them there too. The dog owner shouted, "Run! Now you must bring this building back to light." He picked up a knife nearby, but in the very next moment, his hand turned against himself. Now, the black monster had the full power to control humans. Right in front of Yuri, the man fell lifeless. That dark, terrifying power had now arrived on the entire stage. How would all the building's residents face this horrific monster? Yuri saw the monster killing people with his own eyes and rushed toward his home, seeking help from his father. But Glenn, in anger, called him a liar again and locked him in the room. Glenn's angry behavior was actually the result of illusions given by the soul of his deceased wife. When Yuri tried to force open the door, he saw black sticky fluid leaking from the lock. The monster was still chasing him. Meanwhile, in the dark, terrifying basement, the beggar was still kneeling before the pit. Actually, the monster itself had ordered that Yuri had now become a big problem and must be eliminated at all costs. The beggar bowed immediately, as if he had come to receive orders like an ambassador. Meanwhile, Glenn's dead wife's spirit kept deceiving him, saying Yuri was mentally ill. She said if he wasn't locked in the room, he might harm himself. Glenn found her words reasonable. A while later he made a phone call and then opened the door. As Yuri stepped out, he saw a stranger sitting at the dining table holding a toy car. It looked familiar to Yuri, but he couldn't recognize it. Glenn said the man was a psychologist. They decided Yuri would now be taken to a medical center. The psychologist said, "Our hospital operates under strict surveillance and lockdown. No one is allowed out until fully recovered." Yuri felt a chill down his spine. The entire time, his father didn't find it necessary to ask him anything. As Yuri began walking with the expert down the corridor, he saw his face had changed again. He now looked like the beggar. While Glenn was bidding farewell to his son, he suddenly realized he hadn't even asked which hospital they were going to. He immediately tried to call back, but only strange, distorted sounds came from the other side. Glenn finally realized he had been gravely deceived. He remembered Yuri couldn't have gone far. He rushed to the control room to warn him through the surveillance cameras and speakers. But as soon as he looked at the screen, all he could see were faces of his dead wife. Fear surfaced in Glenn's eyes again as he saw the same scene, their house engulfed in flames. That accident had left a wound in his heart that never healed. Seeing that again triggered his madness once more. Meanwhile, Yuri had already been taken to the rooftop by the beggar. The beggar didn't need any more excuses now. He could throw Yuri down whenever he wanted. Seeing his clothes, Yuri immediately understood that this beggar was actually the long-lost child Zimu. Yuri was shocked. What was behind the wall that had turned Zimu into this? The beggar smiled and said, "None of you ever cared about me. Only that one was always with me." Saying this, he pulled a knife from his pocket and was about to attack Yuri when a loud voice came from behind. It was George who had come to save him. But unfortunately, George was no match for the beggar. Then Yuri noticed the same toy car in the beggar's hand that Zimu always carried. An idea struck Yuri's mind. He snatched the toy car. The beggar panicked and used his powers to forcefully pull the car back, shouting, "This is the only gift my mother gave me." At that moment, George seized the opportunity, grabbed him tightly, and threw him off the balcony. The last messenger sent by the monster to Earth was finally killed. Soon after, the female saleswoman from the general store arrived and warned, "The battle is not over yet." As soon as they descended the stairs, they saw many shadow-like people gathered near the steps. Black sticky fluid was oozing from the walls. After the black blob supply had been cut off, these shadows were now feeding this way. Then, the building's cat owner arrived with several residents. She believed that gathering so many people in one place was dangerous, so she forcibly dispersed everyone. Meanwhile, Glenn suddenly woke up at the office desk. There was a strange power in his eyes again. It seemed the monster still had control over him. Yuri and his two friends were looking for clues about the monster when a loudspeaker echoed through the building. Glenn, in the name of the property management company, requested everyone to stay in their rooms and not go outside. But the cat owner ignored the warning. He believed he represented justice, and it was his duty to purify this building. But everyone ignored the black shadows slowly gathering above his head. Yuri and his friends had now reached Zimu's house. Since his connection with the monster was deep, there was hope of finding some clue there. Suddenly, Yuri saw a strange light coming from the oven. Immediately after, black liquid began dripping out. Strangely, George and the others couldn't see any of this. Yuri felt dizzy and collapsed to the floor. His consciousness arrived in a strange world. The true form of the monster emerged from the darkness, a gigantic eye. Yuri clutched his head in pain, as if the eye had read all his secrets. Then the eye spoke. You see more than the others. Yuri's heart began to pound. The monster could see his memories. He remembered, since childhood he could see things others couldn't. He had never told this to his father, Glenn. Then the eye spoke again. Will you come with me? Yuri refused without hesitation. The next moment he returned to the real world, when the oven door suddenly burst open. Blazing heat emerged, and everyone fled the house in terror. Meanwhile, Glenn, who was repairing an electronic device in the office, was startled by a strange noise from the ventilation pipe. His eyes looked lost again, and he made another announcement on the loudspeaker. No one should leave the building. Glass door leading outside began filling with sticky black fluid. Now the residents' last hope of escape was also gone. Glenn tracked down the justice-loving cat owner via CCTV. That man was still on his mission. Glenn's voice was now filled with hypnosis. He announced, "The black fluid will attack soon, and all residents will be sacrificed to it. Only a few will be allowed to survive." Hearing this, the cat owner immediately switched sides and promised to obey Glenn's every order. Glenn nodded in satisfaction and said, "Bring me my son, Yuri." Soon, another announcement echoed through the building. "This building is about to collapse. Everyone must gather in the entertainment room. I will personally lead you out." Most people stepped out of their rooms. Those who didn't were forcibly dragged by the cat owner. Only one, Bessie, ignored every warning and fear. She still sat in her bedroom, hoping her lost child would return. Then she heard sounds from the ventilation duct. Hope returned to her face. She thought her child had returned. But when she opened the duct and peeked inside, there were only cobwebs. No living being in sight. Tears welled up in Bessie's eyes, but her heart still believed that the magician hadn't lied. Her child would return one day. Meanwhile, Yuri and his companions headed toward the entertainment room after hearing the announcement to uncover the truth. But as they reached the door, the cat owner caught them. He had been watching. Glenn saw the entire scene on CCTV. He ordered the cat owner to bring everyone into the entertainment room. Glenn now felt a strange mental peace, even turned off the background music. People gathered in the entertainment room stared at each other, confused and afraid. They didn't understand what Glenn was doing. Yuri was brought before Glenn. He too wondered what his father really wanted. Glenn spoke openly. If it weren't for the black fluid, this building would have collapsed years ago. The residents' negative emotions feed the black eye. Now the black eye wants to leave this building, but it needs a lot of energy, which can only come from these innocent residents. As Glenn said this, chaos erupted in the room. The deep freezer opened on its own, and black liquid slowly flowed onto the floor. The ground softened and in seconds turned into black quicksand. People ran back in terror, but the door had already been locked by the cat owner. Everyone could only wait now for the black monster to devour them. A saleswoman lagged behind, but George pulled her just in time. Meanwhile, Yuri was thinking, no sane person would sacrifice humans to help a monster. He now believed the black eye was exploiting his father's mental wounds. Yuri spoke the truth. Actually, my mother was depressed and set herself on fire. Her death was no one's fault. Dad, you don't need to feel guilty. As soon as Glenn heard this, it was like he woke from a dream. His eyes became clear again. He was now completely free from the monster's control. The moment Glenn remembered the neighbors, he rushed to save them. But Yuri didn't go with him. He knew he had more important things to do. Father and son parted ways. Glenn ran to the entertainment room, but the cat owner had locked the door from inside. Glenn wasted no time. He grabbed the cat owner by the throat. A woman neighbor who had been trying to open the door for a while saw that the cat owner was under control and quickly unlocked the latch. As soon as the door opened, the people trapped inside rushed out. But that didn't mean they were safe. The main door was still closed. Glenn told the neighbors he would lead them out through the basement repair gate. They quickly reached the nearby garbage room. Glenn broke the cover and told everyone to slide down the garbage pipe to the basement. The black-eyed monster still hadn't appeared. In fact, Yuri had gone back to Zimu's house. He decided to enter the oven himself, and his body gradually entered that black space-like dimension. There, the black-eyed monster's true form appeared before him. Yuri hesitated for a moment but then decided to talk peacefully. During this, the black eye's ability to focus weakened, and using this opportunity, the residents escaped the building. Meanwhile, Bessie, sitting alone in her room, suddenly heard a child crying from the pipe. This time, she knew it wasn't an illusion. She immediately peeked into the pipe and saw. Her child was really there. They say those who wait with a true heart are surely reunited. Bessie's family was finally together again. Soon after, all the residents gathered outside in the square. In everyone's eyes, there was now a sense of a new life. Only Glenn stood silently, staring at the building. Meanwhile, Yuri finally learned the truth about the black eye. The monster said, "Yuri, you too are from my tribe. The time has come to return home." Saying this, the black eye transformed into an orange tunnel. Yuri's body automatically lifted and entered the tunnel. The next moment, he felt as if he were floating in infinite space, slowly moving toward the sun. This was the complete tale of the story called House. In reality, the monster was an alien. Yes, Yuri's true identity was a bit surprising. And even though the story ended a bit quickly, Yuri's roommates truly deserved praise. That's why this story is better than 80% of American series. So that's all for today. Like, share and consider subscribing, and if you have a different opinion, let us know in the comments below.